Welcome, everybody. I'd like to introduce Aida Beco. Is that correct? Am I saying that right, Beco?
Just perfect.
She is a part of the Dare Response crew. Um, they have a Dare app. For me, it was a lifesaver during my recovery when I was dealing with the 75 symptoms, anxiety, looping thoughts, OCD, looping thoughts, intrusive thoughts. And the Dare app was my pocket buddy that I used every day. It was a part of my routine. I'd get up, take a shower, listen to a daily Dare, and then on I went with my day. And it was a lifesaver because it was like training. It was my buddy, my pocket buddy, that was there to help me train. So I'd like to introduce Aida. Thank you for being there. I really appreciate being there. It's a huge honor to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Helmut. I'm glad to be here. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm a coach and content creator for Dare, and I've written the daily Dares. I've done the Dare online course and do a lot of the YouTube stuff and the app content.
Oh, that's amazing. It's huge. It's funny with all the misinformation out there. While I was going through this journey, I don't know how I came across the Dare app. It's like like a needle in the haystack, and I found it. And it was everything for me because, I'll go over some of the things that I was dealing with at the time. I
Yeah.
went from living life, somewhat managing some symptoms here and there, and I had to go for surgery for diverticulitis, and that was the last drop that broke the camel's toe, right?
Mm.
And then I had all these symptoms come up, over 70 symptoms. I was bedridden, and I started doing the brain retraining. I went through that route. I don't know how I found that either, but I think something above was taking care of me, going, nope, no, let's take care of him now so he doesn't, go down all these rabbit holes for too many years because I was going down a lot of rabbit holes. I was joining a lot of Facebook groups, doing a lot of protocols, a lot of wasted time and energy, money. And so I went down, the path of brain retraining, and it was going good. I was started to heal physically. Right? My symptoms started to go. But what I noticed with this journey is the more I was healing physically, the more my physical alarm started to turn off, the more my mental alarm started to skyrocket. All of a sudden, I have post-traumatic stress. I have phobias that I've never had this stuff before, right? Anxiety, relentless anxiety. All these mental alarms are going haywire. And I was stuck with my journey. And with the brain retraining, the way I was doing that is that they avoided the big OCD elephant in the room, and the way they processed that was a lot of resistance. Be
Mm.
in the present moment, hide from your thoughts. Well, a lot of resistance. Try to count backwards. Try to look at the your surroundings, look at the ingredients, right, and not allow anything to be there. It was redirect and move on. Redirect, redirect. You have a thought you don't like, redirect it, right? And make deals with it. They're like, what is the content of the thought? Okay, well, let's see if we can do an opposite of it, right? Maybe you have to find a resolution so that that thought will go away. So I was always investigating past, I was walking back and forth in a safe room, looping on thoughts for weeks. And it could be one thought that I'd be looping on for weeks. And then finally, one of my friends, she mentioned that she was also doing the brain retraining. She's like, I've been there where you are now. And I found this incredible app called the Dare app. And the approach is a little different. I'm like, I don't know if I want to get into this because it's triggering to leave where I was, to jump ship and open a new can of worms. I didn't want to do that. But she recovered. She was also doing the same program as me, the last one. And she said, look, evidence is here. I had the same symptoms as you. I recovered. Her name was Simone. I'm forever grateful that she came into my life and showed me the Dare app. So I got into it. I bought the year subscription, and I just started to get into it. Every day, started to do the daily Dare, and I started to learn how to take the resistance away, allow it to get uncomfortable. And it was a good reminder because when you're in the thick of this journey, I forgot. Like I even if I knew this stuff for 6 months straight, the brain would make sure that I would forget anything I learned, right? So it was good to have a reminder every day. And I also followed your videos, Michelle's videos, like they were everything, right? When I was dealing with symptoms that were looping, I would screen record some of your events, right? Or some of the things that you guys were talking about. And sometimes I had to do this just for the beginning. I would watch a video just on intrusive thoughts or how to that everything's you're everything's fine, you're normal. It's just your alarms are going off. Do this, right? And I would listen to, sometimes to one of these videos. I would say 16 times in a day, right? Just to get through that, right? Okay, are we fine? Just keep doing the work. You're doing the work for the long run. Eventually, you'll see, the evidence will come. And then eventually, I started to recover from all my mental alarms. And I think that was my missing piece to recovery. And I also used that with everything, with my body. Any symptoms I've had, setbacks, physically, whatever, I use the same approach with the dare. Because some people will be like, well, that's an anxiety app. How can you use that? No, no, I have other problems. I'm like, yes, yes, I know. That's what I thought. But I use the same approaches, the same methods, because you start to learn it and you can start to become your own guide in this journey. And I started to implement them with my physical symptoms, life situations, life problems, spiritually, business wise, everything. And it seemed like it was, I discovered like a hidden universal law. This is where we get kind of like woo woo and spiritual. And it's crazy. It's like it's forcing you to learn something different than in the past where I would, be stuck in a certain type of programming, thinking resistance. Now, if a certain situation, it doesn't have to be anxiety, it doesn't have to be physical, falls in my lap, I allow it to be there. I feel the feelings, let it do its thing, ask for more, maybe. Maybe I'll ask for more of it, get to know it, and then I expose myself to it to a point that it's neutral, and then I become the guy in charge. And it usually 9 times out of 10 works out in my favor. So I think this is stuff, a little bit of magic in there. I love it. So this is how the Dare app influenced my life, and I want to thank you guys for all the hard work you did over there at the Dare. And I'm happy that it's really become a big app.
Wow, thank you so much. That's a really moving story. That sounds like you have been through hell and back. It's
And
very
back and
intense.
back and back and back.
Yeah, right, right. It's intense. It's intense.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that the Dare and the work we did has helped you. Dare is amazing, and I can totally attest to what you say. It's not, it's called the Dare response. It has four
right,
steps, but this is not about stepifying anything. Right?
right.
This is more of a life philosophy that you have. It's more a way
Hmm.
of how you meet things, not what
Yeah,
you do about things, but stuff shows up for whatever reason. Could be so many reasons why you're feeling a certain way. Sometimes
right.
life storms come up, sometimes you're sensitized due to other things, but something happens that is unpleasant. How do we meet things that are unpleasant? Right? And the only way usually we know how to meet things is by fixing them, changing them, looking
Yeah.
at them as
Analyzing.
analyzing, figuring it out. And why not? Because analyzing makes total sense. If
Hmm.
we have a problem at work, what do? Rumination is fantastic, but it's productive
Yeah,
because we get to a point because there is actually something to solve. So the anxiety and the stress that our body produce in those circumstances are very helpful.
yeah,
So we actually do get shit done, right?
yeah. That
But
that leads me to a question I've always wondered. Um, what I say, I usually apply the same approach to everything, but some people might be like, well, Hamid, I have a dentist appointment coming up. How do I prepare? Because it's a real, like the brain's perceiving a real event that's really happening. It's perceived as dangerous, right? I feel unsafe about it. How would I tackle that with these type of methods?
well, it's the absolute same approach because, even
Yeah.
though sensations might change, situations might change, patterns always stay the same.
Hmm.
And if we understand the underlying patterns of anxiety, resistance, and control, then we can tackle every situation and every sensation. Right?
Yeah.
So let's not talk about the dentist, but let's talk about the pattern. That is a trigger. In that case, it's the dentist. But it could also
Yeah.
be the elevator, but it could also be the intrusive thought that pops up every time you, whatever, step out of your door. Right?
Hmm.
And then there is the cognitive misinterpretation. And that is one
Right.
of danger. Okay, that having that thought is dangerous, or sitting in that chair, I can't leave, and that causes me to feel trapped. So that is dangerous, right? But you see, it's a misinterpretation. It's not based on facts or on reality.
Right.
Misinterpretation will lead to a physical activation.
Right.
That makes
Your
sense.
alarm system's going off. It's doing its job.
Doing its job, perfect. But when you feel that physical activation, what happens is you misinterpret that as a sign that there is something truly wrong. Right? The
Hmm.
whoosh, as we say, makes the interpretation feel real and not false. So,
Right.
and after that, you usually then behave in a way that would reinforce that idea. So
Right.
I either avoid the dentist, or I
Hmm.
go with a lot of crutches, or I go and hang on for dear life. Da, 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 da.
Hmm.
And if I do
That, yeah, that reaffirms the survival program by
exactly,
white knuckling, surviving through the whole process.
exactly.
So that
So
keeps that alarm running.
in the case of dentists, you can sit down and think, what is it exactly that is making me anxious about the situation? Is it the fear of the pain that I might have?
Hmm.
Is it
Yeah.
because I fear I can't leave? Is it because I feel I fear I'm going to feel a certain way sitting there and I just don't like the feeling of panic in my body?
Hmm.
And depending on what it is for you, you can tackle it. But the
Right.
process of this is experiential avoidance. There is something that is unpleasant that I'm trying to avoid. And that will
Right.
always lead to activation, and activation will always lead to urges and impulses.
Sometimes I did visual exposures. So I'm like, okay, this is driving me nuts. So I'll talk about. I used to use my phone. I used to press record. I'm like, what's bugging me? Let's talk about it in detail, so that I get triggered on purpose. I get shaky. It goes up to 10, and feel the feelings, and then repeat that. Like if the event is coming in a couple days, I might repeat doing a couple visuals to experience myself going through it, feeling all the feelings ahead of time, so that this way, when I go there, my alarm might be down to a 6 instead of a 10.
That's a way to do it. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Hmm.
awesome. I also noticed with the one of the golden nuggets that I got from you guys was, and this helped me a lot with the journey. When I was dealing with a thought, most of them, I'd say 90% of my thoughts, the content of the thought was irrelevant. But at that minute, it felt like it was everything in the world. So that's what got me sucked into the bait of the thought. So when I learned that, I was like, okay, the content of the thought is irrelevant. I know it feels like it is. Just let it do its thing, and then you engage. That was a big shift for me to not get sucked into the content.
Of course, and it makes sense. Anxiety gets triggered in always in our body, although we feel like it's in our head because the thought
Hmm.
crosses our mind. So we feel
Right.
like if it got triggered there, this is the battlefield. So we think we
Yes.
need to tackle it up there. But the thing is, you wouldn't care about any of these thoughts if you wouldn't get a physical, somatic reaction with it.
Right. If it made you feel happy,
You
you wouldn't
wouldn't
care
care.
about it.
So what is really bothering you is not the content of the thought. It's the
Right.
feeling in your body. That is what is bothering you. And this is why
Exactly.
unplugging content from how it feels in your body is so powerful. Because then you get to see that, oh, this is really not about that script in my
Right.
head. It's about that stage in my body. And
Exactly.
Barry says in the book, you don't heal anxiety in your head, right? And that is true on many levels. And what we just discussed is one part, but it's also the trying to figure it out constantly, trying to get somewhere, that attitude of striving with that goal of changing what is in front of me. That's
Yeah.
what the real problem is. Because intrusive thoughts are not the problem per se, right? Sensations
Hmm.
are not the problem per se. Are they unpleasant? Hell, they are. Right? No
Yeah.
question about that. It's not a nice experience or something that somebody would like
Yeah.
to have. But there is a difference between something that is unpleasant and something that is dangerous. Because having a really bad flu is also very unpleasant, highly unpleasant.
Yeah.
Well, you don't
Yeah.
obsess about that, don't you?
No, because
You don't.
we know it'll pass.
We know it will pass. We trust it will pass, and trust is based on experience. That's why when people
Mhm.
say, "Oh, you just need to trust the process," I think that's tough for somebody who has not been through the process yet.
Right.
Because trust is
Yeah.
based on experience. So what you need is, first of all, a thorough understanding of what is going on with you. You cannot tackle anxiety or any of these challenging emotions if you don't have a clear picture of what
Yeah.
it is. That's so important.
Oh
Normalization
yeah.
and understanding is 50% of the battle won. Then number
That's true.
two, you need to get to know yourself. That's also part.
Mm.
It's a discovery process. Okay, what am I sensitive to? What does my mind love to latch onto? for whatever reason. It's because it has a sensitivity to this topic, or because, I have had certain experiences in my life that make me more sensitized to this.
Yep.
And looking at yourself and your sensitivities through a lens of compassion, we all have a certain makeup, so to speak. And when you get to
Yeah.
know anxiety, how it manifests for you, what you're sensitive to, and then also, how do I behave? How do I react? And being
Hmm.
truthful and compassionate with yourself. How, okay, that's the thing I still avoid, or that's the thing I'm still not daring to look at.
Right.
And when you have a full picture of these elements, this is when you can go and tackle it.
Yeah. How can you work on anything unless you're aware of it? So that's the first step, being aware, and then continuously being aware, not just being aware on the Tuesday, like learning how to really be a observer of your behavior. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and what do you say to people that are like, okay, well, this is hard when I do this, when I feel uncomfortable when I do it. I feel I get a trigger. I don't like it. Or when the people they say, well, how do you allow? I'm trying to allow. I'm trying to allow. So how would you show people how do you allow? And is it normal to feel like shit when you're doing this stuff?
Yeah. So, to your last question, yes, because we don't need to
Yeah.
allow things that are pleasant, right? It's not
Right.
like, oh, I'm allowing this beautiful experience. No, I want it. I want more of it. I'm totally fused to it, and that's good. Cognitive
Yeah.
fusion is a helpful process. And when we're fully
Right.
immersed into something in love, or in a good movie, and we get to experience it with all our senses, that's
Hmm.
awesome. The problem is when we're fused to our mind, into our feelings, into our experiences
Hmm.
so deeply that we cannot unfuse or defuse from it a bit. Because what fusion really means is, I think A, I feel B, and I do C. Like, it's an automated process. And
Yeah.
with positive experiences, that is great. Oh, I see something, whatever, a bucket of ice cream. And I'm like, oh, I love ice cream. And I eat the ice cream and I feel awesome. But what happens if an intrusive thought shows up and my alarm
Hmm.
goes, oh, oh my God, run. And what do I do?
Right.
I run. Right? But that won't help me. It will make it worse. This is
Yeah.
why having a bit of diffusion is important. On the allow side, so let's say
Hmm.
we've spiraled down, okay? We are in the anxiety loop. Let's pick intrusive thoughts, for example, and we've been fighting that thought. We've been trying to distract, didn't work. It gets worse and worse.
Yep.
Now somebody tells you, look, you need to lose that fear of that thought, and in order to do that, you must be okay with it being present.
Mm.
Of course, that's uncomfortable, because if I'm not using compulsions, it will be much more in the forefront of my mind and in my awareness. So
Hmm.
that's one thing. So when you start to let go of your crutches and safety behaviors, you will start to see things more clearly. It's not that you were keeping them at bay before, right? That's an illusion.
Yeah.
But there is still an element of distraction, and you can keep that distraction up for a while at least.
Right. So, like, how do you, for somebody who's had, like, for me, I had thermometers in different rooms. I would body check in secret, and I had blood pressure machines. And what was the other one? Heart rate, checking my heart rate all the time. All three of those. Um, if somebody was getting into this and they're doing all these things, they're body checking constantly, right? That keeps the alarm up constantly. How do you stop these things, these crutches and these, behaviors? What's a good way to stop them?
I think you need to do some inner work first before you start changing your behavior. And that is
Yeah.
really getting clear on what am I truly afraid of. And there's a good exercise from ACT to do that. It's called the control agenda. So, what am I trying to control? Write that down.
Hmm.
Right? What am I
Yeah.
trying to control? In what ways am I doing that? And then
Hmm.
the most important question is, what has been the outcome so far?
Right.
Is for you to recognize that you're trying to control something that was never yours to control in the first place. That's number one. And number two, that you're not getting anywhere with it. And that
Right.
really the outcome is that you're making yourself worse, you're increasing your suffering. And
Right.
then when you get, and usually, sometimes, not usually, but many times, people need to get to a point where they hit rock bottom.
Yes, you need it.
It's
Because
that
then for me, I needed to have that fear to drive me. I needed, and falling on your face is just, it's at the time, I know it sucks. It's the worst thing in the world, but in a way, afterwards, you see, it was a gift that forced change in my life.
yeah,
For
yeah.
sure. Yes, I agree.
Yes. And sometimes, it's almost like, life's way of telling you, just try different. Try
Yeah.
something different because this is not working. And that's incredibly hard when you reach that point because you
Hmm.
feel so hopeless and you really do feel broken. This experience can leave you feel very broken because you're not dealing with something external. External stuff is hard, right? No question. But when you feel like your body and mind are turning on you, it's like you have lost your home base. And how do I operate in this
Yeah.
world? How do I orient myself in this world if I don't feel in charge and at home in myself? This is why anxiety about anxiety, although its patterns are pretty simple, not easy, okay, but
Right.
foundation of it is simple, but it can really drive people to a very, very low point in their life.
For me, the main issue, and I see this with a lot of people, is the journey of this. When the doubt starts hitting you like crazy, thinking that, okay, with your methods that you're doing right now, it's not doing anything right now. So how do you, when you're bombarded with the brain sending all this doubt, how do you find that trust that, in time things will regulate, but everything around me is lying to me. My 3D reality, my symptoms are lying to me. Things aren't going away yet. I'm getting setbacks. I'm feeling worse actually than I when I just started these methods. What what is a good tip for people to understand that eventually this will go away, but right now it doesn't feel like it.
Mm. Well, first thing I would say is truly understand the body's physiology of stress and sensitization. That
Hmm.
is super, super important. I have a YouTube video on sensitization that explains that in more depth, but what is sensitization? Imagine it's like voltage, okay? And
Yeah.
our body gets sensitized. It's an electrical system. Okay? And it
Hmm.
gets sensitized due to several factors. And stress doesn't always have to be negative. Imagine that you have 5 dinner parties. After the fifth, you're gonna feel like, dude, leave me alone. I need some alone time.
Yeah.
Well, that's enough. And you feel uneasy, right? That's sensitization. But you don't fear that
Yeah.
because you know
Yeah.
why? Because you understand where it's coming from. There is a context to it. You can put your finger on
Yeah.
it. Ah, it's those damn dinner parties. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, it was the hangover. Oh, it was that. Right? But in
Right.
anxiety about anxiety, when you don't see the context for what you're feeling, this is when your anxious mind jumps in. It's like, hey, dude, what's wrong with you? Right?
Yeah.
Something's up. Where is the danger? It starts scanning and it can't identify it. Thing is, your brain is supposed to ask this question. It's supposed to not
Yeah.
let it go. So it
Yep.
will turn on itself and then ask, oh, what if it's you? Oh my God,
You're right.
is that a heart attack? Oh,
Oh
is
yeah.
that, is that the first sign of going crazy? I mean, who has these thoughts?
Yeah.
That's all brains do that. Okay? All brains do that. Some are more sensitive to turn inwards and ask that question than others. Okay, that's just a fact. This is the cards that we've been dealt with. My brain is like that. Probably yours is like that. Barry's brain's like
Hmm.
that. Charles' brain's like that. Right? The thing is, when again, going back to cognitive fusion, I imagine I don't have any distance, okay, between myself, my observer self, and
Hmm.
that thought. What will happen? Oh yeah, oh my God, what if this is a heart attack? Yeah, what if I'm going crazy? And then ding, ding, ding. Oh, we don't want to go crazy. Oh, we don't want to have a
Oh
heart
yeah.
attack. So go save yourself. Here's some energy. Here's the whoosh. Go save yourself.
Right.
So usually sensitization, in most cases, starts after prolonged time of stress. And that could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be big life changes, it could be hormonal, like, menopause or PMS or birth of a child. But it could also be that it just happened, you just had a panic attack for whatever
Hmm.
reason, a mini panic attack, and your brain doesn't find the context. And then it makes up a context. And this is where
Right.
things start to go south. You know,
Yep.
a panic attack, I know it's hard to say that, okay, but people will be like, oh, she's crazy. What is she talking about? A
Yeah.
panic attack is no problem at all. A panic attack is
Yeah.
nothing, absolutely nothing. It's a firework of energy, boom, and it comes down. It's
Yeah.
nothing. But when you don't understand what it is, it feels like it's something that is going to kill you.
It's interesting when you know, when you've experienced it and you have the methods and you've updated your thinking about it, and then you do get a panic attack. It's interesting how we change our response now compared to years ago. I laugh at it. I'm like, come on, bring it on. Look at this. This is interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a heart attack. Give me more. I love this. I love it. And I'm like, and it just dies on the vine right away. It's like, fuck it, leave him
Yeah.
alone.
Because it's not an attack, right? It's
Yeah,
not an attack. I can't emphasize this enough. And no words and language, all that is beautiful, but it really gets us into trouble because there is no attack happening. So we need to change that. This is just
yeah,
your energy that is your own energy that is always there, your life force. And for one
right.
moment, it just boof goes up and then it comes down. It's the interpretation of things. I always
That's
tell
what it
my
is. Yeah,
clients if you wouldn't know what this was, okay, if you wouldn't have words for it like panic attack and all the stories that you have attached to it, how would this feel in your body right now? Oh, I don't know, just a bit restless and jittery. Ah, you see, the power of appraisal. Appraisal is
hmm,
the most important thing. If we go back to that anxiety cycle, cognitive appraisal or slash interpretation, and this is where everything stands and falls. And whatever you're appraising in a certain way gets reinforced by your behavior. So if you want to change whatever it might be, intrusive
yeah,
thoughts, anxiety, panic attacks, you start with understanding, appraisal, and behavior. And if you have been dealing with something for a long time, you can absolutely still recover. It's just, we
hmm,
learn stuff along the way and we practice a lot of false behaviors and responses. So it might take a bit longer to create new associations. It might take
yeah,
a bit longer for you to take that leap of faith and try something else and let go of the things that you were thinking are keeping something at
yeah,
bay. Because no, and we all know that, right? You monitoring your heart is not preventing you from having a heart attack. Me staring
no,
at my
yeah,
thoughts or me looking in the mirror to see, oh, do I feel more connected today? How bad is it? It's not making me any more or less connected because that's totally outside of our grip. Think about it.
right.
Most of the things are totally outside of our control. And it's trying the attempts of control that our anxieties fuel, not the anxiety per se. That's the most important aspect of recovery is that control part.
Yeah,
It's nothing more important than that. The
right.
moment I let go of control, the moment my body takes over and it's like, okay, let's bring you back to balance because
Hmm.
this is what our body always does. It's a self-regulating system. Your body and your mind doesn't want nothing more than for you to be in a good place. And we
It's
forget
there to serve you.
it's there
Yeah,
to serve you and it's trustworthy. It's trustworthy. And
yeah,
people hate me for saying that because like, how can I trust my brain when it's bringing me so
yeah.
many intrusive thoughts? Well, that's not the problem. You had an intrusive thought and you are the one saying that's a problem. You are the one saying
That's
something's
right,
wrong with me for me having that intrusive thought. And we all have intrusive thoughts, but they don't feel intrusive because we don't fear them. That's the difference.
right. The way I see it is that everything that you're feeling right now is something that you programmed in your life, either because life threw you curveballs and how you responded, and it's all a programming that you, at the end of the day, programmed. And the brain isn't there to. It's not your enemy. It's not there to play tricks on you, and it's not having fun with you. There's no demons. It's just
No.
a misunderstanding. You're just misunderstanding the communication, and now you're learning how to communicate with it. In the beginning, sure, it might feel counterintuitive,
Mm.
right? But after you realize, oh, that's genius. Actually, it was supposed to be like this and like this. Wow, we didn't get a handbook when we were born. This makes sense. All these years we just misunderstood. That's all. And it's there to serve you.
Yes, yes. And again, because fixing and control and analyzing and rumination works. It works. It works beautifully in many areas of our life. So
Yeah.
it's normal that we would apply the same principles and success strategies to our inner experiences. And normal,
Right.
so human. And we should have a lot of compassion for that, that we're really trying because people do try so hard to help themselves. And it's always
Right.
beautiful, although it's bittersweet because seeing their agony and their pain is heartbreaking, but also
Yep.
seeing the courage and the effort and how determined they are is, on the other hand, really, really moving to see.
Did you deal with any anxiety or depersonalization and derealization, anything like that in your
Oh
life?
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that a client has ever asked or told me something about their experience that I couldn't relate to. I had a fantastic mix of everything. But I was more team mental, right? I was always very connected with my body, always into exercise, so I never minded a dizziness or a racing heart or nausea. I couldn't care less about that.
Right.
I actually
Yeah.
enjoyed the feeling of, hearing my heartbeat or feeling it. It's
Right.
something unpleasant. But for me, it was. And thinking back, I think I had experienced my first round of depersonalization when I was really young, like maybe
Hmm.
13, 14, after a loss that I had experienced, but I didn't know it was depersonalization. It just
Right.
felt.
That's the scary part. The first time I ever experienced that, it
Mm.
felt like I was out of my body, and that is a scary, scary symptoms because what happens? The thoughts, the what if thoughts go to right to something, huge like MS or I'm going crazy or what. So that's a scary one.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, at that young age, I didn't have so much understanding about what it could be. So I didn't have
Hmm.
so many what if thoughts about that. But of course, what happened was I felt so lonely and isolated, and I didn't dare to tell my parents or anybody. And
Right.
and that passed as it usually does when you're young,
Hmm.
because you just let things go and you move on with your life. But of course, that would be the thing that got triggered after I had my panic attack.
Right. Yeah.
And
I think it's important that people who teach this stuff have been through it because you can really understand what people are going through. You've been in the trenches second by second. You know what it's been like. So that's why you speak from experience and from the heart compared to other people that just regurgitate what they read from somewhere else and they're not helping you. They're actually in a way hurting you, right? That's why I think it's really important. That's why I asked this. I'm like, have you been through it? Yes. I think
yeah,
it's huge.
there's some truth to it, and I appreciate that, most people who work with people, they're really trying their best and they want to help. But especially
Yeah.
with feelings of detachment, it's a little bit tricky because your detachment could be a psychotic symptom, as in the way that is classified, right, in DSM
Mm.
and ICD. And if somebody is not experienced, they might put it in that category. Right? You can
Right.
also see it,
Oh,
in panic disorder. But what's not so clear, especially for young counselors, is that people can have intrusive thoughts and feelings of detachment while just having a phase of generalized anxiety. You can just be sensitized, let's say, for 4 weeks, whatever, because something happened. And during those 4 weeks, you might experience intrusive thoughts and detachment without now having yet another diagnosis that means something really, really
ugh.
bad. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And the dramatization of everything, that's horrible. And I get a lot of clients, unfortunately, who have been told, oh yeah, this looks like, psychosis and we need to watch it. And
Ugh.
obviously that's the worst thing people can hear in that
Yep.
position. And depersonalization is a scary one. All symptoms are scary,
Oh,
and depending on um, depending on how sensitive you are to to certain things, of course, whatever you're experiencing is the most scary to you. But I think the weird thing, or the special nuance depersonalization and derealization has, is that we're not familiar with it. We know with
yep.
dizziness or a racing heart or wobbly knees or not being able to sleep, those are symptoms that we experience in another context of our life. But when did you
Hmm.
ever feel detached? Right?
Right.
Rarely. Yes, sometimes when you're overly tired or after smoking pot or whatnot, but
Oh,
compared to other sensations, it is pretty rare. So when that hits, it feels very, very scary. And if you don't have somebody to tell you, to normalize the experience for you, your
that's the
mind
one.
is going to go absolutely bonkers on
Yeah.
stories on what this could mean now. And the worst thing was in my case, I had the really first intense episode of depersonalization after a meditation. but not because it was the
Mm.
meditation, right? It was not the meditation. I was just, was so much on my plate. I've been doing a lot. Everything was exciting, by the way. Like, it was not negative stress, it was just a lot. And so I sat
Yeah.
down to meditate, and it was interesting because the moment I noticed, oh, this is so nice, all of a sudden my heart started beating really fast and I had a panic attack
Mm-hmm.
during meditation. And so, of course, my anxious mind would go like, what did you do to yourself? What did
Yes.
you do? So, oh my God, was this? It didn't have anything to do with the meditation, but the mind draws conclusions. And if we're fused to it, we will
Yep.
believe it, and it's going to get us into a very bad place. Now,
Yeah.
doing what every normal human would do is I went to Google.
Of course.
Hey,
Oh,
racing heart panic during meditation. And of course, what would Google show me? Oh yeah, that could be a spiritual Kundalini awakening, whatever there are, could lead to
yeah.
psychosis, da 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 da. And I was like, I
Oh,
remember
fuck.
like today, I closed the laptop, I was like, oh my fucking God.
Yeah, I know.
What did I do? What did I do? I don't want this. I don't want this. And not having somebody to normalize
It's
these.
usually schizophrenia, multiple personality disorders,
Oh,
MS, or every third search. Even if I'm looking for a recipe, it says cancer. I'm looking for a recipe. Why the fuck is it saying cancer?
very.
Crazy. Don't ever Google. Don't do it.
No, don't ever do it. Don't reach out to somebody, who can really help you. Don't make your life worse because you can get worse pretty quick. Um, and yeah, this is when because that was the fear was very intense, and it's important to understand that the deeper or the higher the fear in a certain moment, the deeper it gets fused with the sensation or the context in which it
Hmm.
appears. So my fear level as when I was reading this was at a 20 out of 10. And
Yeah.
of course, in that moment, depersonalization was present. So now you can
Yeah.
imagine that, oh, fear fused itself to depersonalization plus meditation, plus spirituality and all the side branches. Okay, and now there is this, imagine like a cloud. Now, every time
Yeah.
I would see here something about meditation, spirituality,
Trigger.
trigger, yes, right? And that's how it's supposed to be. So
Yeah.
my brain was doing a fantastic job. And depersonalization, I had intrusive thoughts, I had high generalized anxiety, I had insomnia, that nagging, ever persisting hyper awareness, the thinking about thinking, the
Yep.
everything it was really hard. Um, but I could manage everything, manage as in I was never someone who would use crutches or stay home. I would still do
Right.
the thing. I would die internally, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I would do it. But depersonalization was a really tough one for me
Well, how
because
did you find the way out? This I'm guessing this is before you were trained. But even then, I've many therapists out there. I didn't get any help from. They didn't work for me. I know they're trying their best, but this is a little different. These approaches, like it's like a unicorn.
yeah.
Honestly, finding the right people to work with, it's like unicorn. So how did you find, uh, how to work through this?
That's a good question. I was at the beginning of my studies back then, and being a good young therapist, I did what we do. We dig up our childhood, obviously. We
Yeah.
dissect every thought, right? We do the whole cognitive restructuring. All, there are many similarities, right, to what you were doing in your program, different,
Yeah.
but similar patterns there. So of course
Digging.
it was of course digging. So I digged up all my traumas until I found my grandmother's traumas and digged through hers, and it was just it never stopped. And I tried everything. I'm trained in CBT, in ACT, and in hypnotherapy, and I love hypnotherapy for many
Yeah.
reasons. I still use it today in many elements of my work. But again, the
Yeah.
goal and the attention is important. Right? Am I trying to make the anxiety or the sensation go away? Yes, and no matter what you do, it's not gonna work.
Right.
So, and it was phases. It wasn't very, very bad all the time. It would peak and be really bad for a couple of weeks, and it would ebb up and be a bit more manageable. And then I had an MRI appointment. And
Hmm.
I was never afraid of MRIs. I have to go there on a yearly checkup. So I didn't expect anything bad to happen, but then all of a sudden I had this really bad panic attack in that MRI scan.
Hmm.
And it's a head MRI, so it takes quite a while until you're done.
Been there.
And when I stepped out of that MRI, I felt so sensitized, like somebody pushed a button. I mean, the sensitization went through the fucking roof.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I was back fully in there. Generalized anxiety. Driving was a problem. Being alone at home was a problem. Sleeping, just existing
Yeah.
felt unbearable. And of course, depersonalization would come back. And
Mm.
I remember that one moment where I had this urge to now, use all my tools, my good therapy tools, to fix
Right.
this, to fix
How
this.
did that work out?
And then I remember that clearly. I stepped out of the house and said, look, universe, I've been doing my best. This is not working. And I'm not going to move
Right.
anymore. I'm not going to move. Okay, you need to tell me what to do because this is not working. And that's
Right.
exactly what I did. So I'd say, looking back, it's a moment of surrendering to it.
Hmm.
And I think that night or the next night, I came across a YouTube video of Barry, and it wasn't even a good video. And I wasn't looking for anxiety; it just popped up on
Right.
my feed. And
That's interesting that you said before you continue. Um, when we surrender and this is what happened to me. I think this is, if you guys believe in the spirituality stuff, I think for me, I was running down the hallway, I was screaming, please, God, help me, please. Right. I was a person, I wasn't, a religious person. I believe in consciousness and all that stuff. But a week later, it pops up in my feed, or this pops up, and then you get lined up with the answer. And it seems like it's a pattern. It happens, right? I believe in that.
yeah, I think that's personal belief. I too believe that the universe always takes care of a surrendered heart.
Yeah.
But this is I don't have a paper to show it. Obviously,
Right.
it's just my personal belief, and what
Yeah.
led me to that moment of just letting go. And I was just listening to YouTube in the background, doing some other stuff, and then but I heard his voice, and I was like, "Who is this dude talking about anxiety?" And I was like, "Okay, whatever, let's listen to it." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Barry McDonough. Oh, he has a book. Yeah, okay, whatever." So I went to Audible that
Yeah.
moment and I downloaded the book. And as I was listening to him, especially in the intro section, I just felt, oh, yeah,
Hmm.
that's something clicking. So went through the book, and it was that missing piece. I
Yeah.
already did a lot of things right and knew a lot, but that was the missing piece, the
Yeah.
run towards step of dare for me.
Right.
And
Yeah. Usually when I talk about that, people go, huh? Huh. Right? I
yeah,
get a lot of that.
yeah, yeah.
It makes
And,
sense though. It's incredible.
yeah, and I loved the book. I loved his approach. I loved his genuinity, and I was like, okay, we really do need this book to be translated into German for more
Right.
people. So I reached out to him and asked, hey, do you have any plans of translating the book? And he was like, yeah, that would be great. Anyway, ended up I translated the book, voiced the audiobook, and this is how we started working together. And that was
Amazing.
2018, and since then a lot of things have
Wow.
happened.
That's a lot of things. That's not too far away. 2018.
Yeah,
You guys have
so
really grown. Really. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And huge appreciation for Barry, for Michelle, for the
Hmm.
approach, for the
Yeah.
community. The community is very
How did you guys find Michelle? Because she's like finding the people that it's like finding another unicorn, right? It's like, whoa, yeah, we vibe. This is crazy. How did that happen?
yeah. Well, Barry and Michelle, they were already working together for a long time.
Ah,
I came 2018.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and 2018 we did, well, what did we do? Yeah, Michelle was already doing their advanced calls. I joined Michelle on
Hmm.
the calls, and then we did a few changes. So we have the Dare Academy online course, which is a guided
Hmm.
online course, 3 weeks with me, 3 months with Michelle, and
Hmm.
the app, YouTube courses, a lot of stuff.
No, that's awesome. It's action packed. I remember when I bought it. I just stuck to the daily dares. I bought the book, but I couldn't read it because it was triggering because it would talk about things like heart. Some people have fear about the heart, and it shows you what to do. So when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to open that can of worms. I don't even want to look at the heart thing. So then, and about breathing, I was analyzing how much, right? I was paying attention to my breathing, my heart, everything. So I just stuck to the daily dares, and
Mm.
that's all I needed. And it was beautiful.
Well, I'm glad they resonated. They were written
Yeah.
with you in mind, with people in mind who go through that. Definitely. Mm.
Do you guys have any future plans for the dare? Anything you guys are gonna build on or any future goals?
Well, at the moment, we're focusing more on YouTube. That's something we have definitely left behind because we were just so busy with doing other
Yeah.
things. We had retreats, we had workshops, we did a lot of
Hmm.
content for the app. But now we're
Hmm.
focusing a bit more on YouTube. And then let's see if we can get Barry to do a dare retreat somewhere in the world. Michelle and I,
Oh, that'd be cool.
that'd be cool, right? A cruise or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Retreat. Why not? And the way for me, it was like it's not so much that and in the beginning it was I had to learn the acronym, I had to learn the steps, but eventually you get it. You get how it works, and then you become your own guide, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
the whole purpose of Dare, you know. The whole purpose of that is to teach you another way, a more flexible way to relate to yourself and to your experiences. Right? It's based and the roots of Dare are not new, but the whole idea, and that's really the fundament of Dare and every mindfulness-based approach is you are not your
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah.
You are not. You are experiencing stuff. You have thoughts, you have sensations, and before or without having that awareness, you will never be able to change.
Yeah.
And once you have been, I always tell my clients, once you have been through something so deep and hurtful and challenging, like anxiety about anxiety,
Hmm.
depersonalization, intrusive thoughts, it will allow you to sink deeper and align more with your true self, with who you are.
Oh,
Because you get to see that you are not the conceptual mind. You're
yeah.
not.
Hmm.
And in our mind, it's like waves in the ocean. Right? Sometimes it's a storm,
Hmm.
sometimes it's really calm, but what is beneath it? And this is who you are. But when we mistake ourselves for the waves or for the storm, it will always be hard because then we completely depend on what goes up in here and what goes up in our life. Going
Yeah.
through that gives you immense inner strength. It allows you to build a deep sense of appreciation and compassion for yourself. It truly is an invitation to grow. And getting out
Yeah.
of the other side, you understand one thing. And this is, I think, something that you never forget. When something scares you, you learn to look the thing that scares you directly in the eye and
Hmm.
not run. And only when
Yeah.
you do that, you're able to see what it truly is. If you keep
Right.
running or hiding, you will never be able to make the distinction, oh, is this true danger or is it just discomfort? But you need to stop running. You need to face whatever you're experiencing properly. And maybe only once, sometimes once is enough to face it
Yeah.
once, to see it for what it is. Because when we don't look at it, we make up stories. It becomes big.
Yeah.
When we don't allow anxiety to be part of our life, to coexist with it, we think it's this big monster. And the longer we do
Hmm.
it, the more that monster grows. So, of course, I will be afraid to let it in.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
there is no way around it. Everything else is just management. And I think
Yeah.
your life and you deserve more than just to manage something that really has no deeper sense.
Right. I think this journey for me was in a spiritual awakening. It
Mm.
forced it because I had to rely and dig inside myself to I needed something to help me cross that invisible bridge. And because my 3D reality, my symptoms were telling me otherwise. So it's a good opportunity to grow spiritually. And I know that's not for everybody, but I've noticed a lot of people that I talk to say the same thing, that it changed something in them and that they're um more spiritually um awakened because of this
Yeah.
journey.
Well, how did that happen for you? What did you notice? What changes?
Well, before I thought I was always spiritual, but I really wasn't because for me is falling on my face and having the second by second, especially with the OCD looping thoughts, right? Because it holds you there. You can't take a break, right? The OCD looping thoughts about all my symptoms, thinking that I'm gonna either die on Tuesday or I'm gonna be stuck like this for the rest of my life. I'm gonna lose my dreams, my wife, my daughters. I'm not gonna be able to be a dad. All the guilt, the shame, and the fear of
Mm.
being, on disability and being stuck with this feeling every 3 seconds constantly, right? That forced me to really surrender and to dig deep and start from scratch
Mm.
in a way because it makes you vulnerable and then you have to start somewhere and then minute by minute doing the methods, right? And even though I was doing the methods, I was feeling like shit. That's the thing. Just because you have symptoms does not mean that you're not on the journey to recovery. It does not mean that, just because you feel horrible, the doubts are there, you have a setback. It does not mean the finish line isn't coming. And that's what I had to learn, right? And eventually the evidence started to come. I started to notice I was changing my behavior patterns, the way I was responding to thoughts and feelings, the way my anxiety started to come down. And then recovery came. And during that journey, I would get golden nuggets of clarity, right?
Mm.
Because I used to do visuals
Mm.
every day for an hour because it helped me regulate my sensitized nervous system.
Mm.
So I do visuals where I be getting the detail, sitting the dose, the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins of the visual of me fishing in BC or
Beautiful. I did that too. Beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, very
yeah,
helpful.
1 hour a day somewhere else other than ruminating and analyzing. I
Mm.
took 1 hour a day where I was just doing my visuals. And I in the beginning I failed at my visuals. 90% of them are wasting time because my brain was like, no, 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 think about this. Think about no, think about right. Eventually that gate opened and allowed me to actually enjoy my visuals and do it for a whole hour. Before it was like the hour was wasted. But then eventually I was able to do it and enjoy it. And I looked forward to it. It wasn't something that I had to do. It was something that I can't wait to get a tea, go park somewhere near a trail, snow's falling, put the window down, my dog's there. All right, let's have a meeting with myself and have an hour of visuals. And
Beautiful.
then that was my work that I did, right? But I didn't feel like work. And then I also implemented 1 hour a day where I would dance. I'm not a dancer. I don't know how to dance. I look stupid when I dance. But I still did 1 hour a day where I'd sit in a room, put some music on while I was feeling shitty, right? Fake it till I make it. And maybe I'd be crying or like, oh my God, my shoulder pain, and my thoughts are going, no, no, no. I danced, I boogied, right? And that also put me in dose. That made me feel good. And eventually it caught up with doing the dare methods, everything. And with the visuals, along with the visuals, I would get downloads. And this is for some people, okay, that's woo. I'm not in this is why I tap. But for me, I really believe that if I needed some answers, if I had some insecurities or something, while I'm doing my visuals, all of a sudden I would get a thought and it would come out because I used to record my visuals on my phone. Just in case there's something that was important I need to learn, I would put it in a file that I can come back to it later, or I'd listen to it if I was going on a drive, right? And sometimes I would get, actually on an ongoing basis, these golden nuggets. If I had a question, I need some clarity. You give me some clarity or some golden nuggets, and you would get them. And it'd come out your mouth. You're like, whoa, 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 what did I just say there? Okay, let's rewind that. Blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. I would write it down and I'd be like, yes, right? So that's where I got and life synchronicities, right? I'm like, I don't know what I should do next. Blah, blah, blah. This symptom, what does this mean? And then you go through life, you hear the song lyrics or you hear something would just line up and you go, aha, right? And I started to listen to my intuition and to my gut, right? And that that's how this became like a spiritual thing where I started to grow spiritually and be more in tuned with with my gut and my intuition. But in the beginning, it can also the OCD can throw it in your face. That's another thing. If you get too spiritual in the beginning, it can throw. I was looking for answers with mediums and tarot card readings, and I
Mm.
was constantly chasing for that reassurance. And then it'd be like, actually, it says here you're going to be dying of a disease. I'm like, what? Fuck, I wish I didn't see that episode of that tarot card
Yeah.
reading. Fuck, and then I looped on that for 2 weeks. So
Uh,
it can also throw shit in your face. So it's kind of like the balance.
yeah, yeah, that can be absolutely tricky. And if you wanted to make this less woo-woo-ish, okay,
Yeah,
I don't think it's woo-woo. I fully understand what you mean.
yeah,
But I also appreciate that for some people, they have heard maybe stories about spirituality or associated with things that are very woo-woo. So
Yeah.
I get that. But you know, if we look at it like this, we have a conceptual mind, and there we have our whatever essence, so to speak, right? Who we
Yeah.
are. And our conceptual mind can be filled or is filled through experiences, through the things we consume, to societal pressures of how should and what we should be. But
Hmm.
that's not always what truly aligns with what we want, with our values. But the thing
Yeah.
is that our values don't scream at us. They're
Yeah.
not in our face.
Right.
Everything that the mind comes up with is always very loud. So, what mindfulness really helps us with is when we think less, when we get out of the conceptual mind and we get more into the space of being, our thoughts will be colored by our essence. Right? We'll still have thoughts, but they will feel more aligned with what we want.
Yeah.
Some people might say, "Oh, I'm finally listening to what I want," or "I'm clear on what I want now." And it's all really the same thing, right? It's our inner essence where our values lie, and then it's conceptual stuff that we think we should do or should have. And usually analyzing and consuming more things only feeds the conceptual mind. And
Yep.
in ACT therapy, for example, which is my preferred therapy method, value work is so important. And how do we get to
Hmm.
know what our values are? By practicing mindfulness, by practicing being here, by doing reflective exercises. That all gets us into a zone. And the download that you described, right? That's, oh, now I'm having thoughts that feel aligned with what
Yeah.
I want and with who I am. And I'm just adding this to what you beautifully said, because if you some who watch this feel like spirituality is not for me, that's what it is. That's,
Yeah.
spirituality in a more down to earth way and
Right.
experienceable for all of us without it needing to be with, whatever mediums and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I
I
totally
like that. Down to earth.
right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you know what? Thank you for being a part of this interview. I'm really grateful for you being here. I think what we can do is we can send me your links to all the Dare stuff and all the stuff that you do, and I'll put them in the description. And then people can reach out, or they can add the Dare app. And I think you should join the Dare app. Make sure it's a part of your daily routine. It's like a good pocket buddy. And yeah, thanks again for being on the show. This was a great interview. Thank you.
It was a great interview, and thank you for having me. All the best.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.